Hiya, so today I'm going to be looking at a few pictures of horses with various issues going on in their mouth and sadly with their reins and the handling of them. It's a subject I find deeply fascinating. We see this all too often with our horses and ponies. As soon as we exert backward pressure, things start. So let's have a look. So this horse we can see, well, anyone who knows horses can see from its expression it's having a bad time. You can see it's ridden on a curb bit here, so it's a Western rider of some shape or form. And the idea of a curb bit like that is that they're lightly touched and only touched. They're not ridden in a consistent contact such as we do in English riding. If you look, you see that the horse has got a port over its tongue, which is allowing it some tongue room, which is probably why the tongue hasn't been sucked back. But you can see as soon as the head is above the vertical, the extreme pressure on the bars that's now going to be inflicted. Now, if we look at curb bits, it's always said they exert pole pressure. If pole pressure worked, this horse's head would not be up in this position. It's a bit of a fallacy that we think pole pressure is all. What it's actually doing is it's going to push the horse to a certain degree where you want it, but when the pain or discomfort in its mouth becomes too much, that pole pressure will mean nothing. The horse will come above that action, then the bit changes, the whole functionality of it changes. So you can see the discomfort that this horse is in. If its face was a little bit more in a usual head carriage, that tongue port would be sitting nicely over the tongue, but the bars wouldn't be quite as jeopardised as they are at this moment. And again, if you've seen my video about bars of the mouth, you can see the pressure and leverage that's being exerted on those very two thin lines of bone there. The nerve pain as well with the extra leverage must be worth noting. So here we have a very common picture, actually. First, I want you to notice that despite the slobber, you can see that the horse is trying to open its mouth, but the noseband is restricting that. But there's a definitive crossing of the jaw going on. Now, again, this is all horses in a three-ring snaffle by the look of it. And again, this is meant to exert pole pressure. If this was exerting pole pressure, this head would not be in this position. Effective pole pressure, perhaps I should say. So this is undoubtedly a jointed bit. We can see that by the side of it there. You see that the drop part of the grackle noseband is keeping that mouth as shut as possible. As a consequence, the horse can only cross its jaw. As soon as we exert backward pressure on that rein, we are levering the mouth open. That it's just physics, it's just what it does. As soon as the rein loses a straight line from hand to bit ring, as in this case, you can see that there's a slight break in that straight line. So the martingale is trying to exert a bit more downward pressure on a horse that's now sitting so far back from the bridle that the only contact that the rider can maintain is a backward pull. And that's going to just continue and continue. If our reins are too long, and I'm not saying they are in this case, it's a bit like a dog on a lead. If it's got 20 foot of lead in front of you, it can ping quite a lot and really get up to a lot of trouble before you've gathered up the knitting in order to correct this. And in English riding, this is very much the same, and it happens a lot in jumping and things because you have to slip the rein to give the neck some freedom. However, the longer the rein, the more of a backward action you have to use. Now this horse here, as you can see, is in a double bridle, the thin snaffle bridoon bit there and the Weymouth curb. Now you'll see its mouth is open. I want you to notice this horse is behind the vertical. It is not in a comfortable outline, hence its jaw is open. The bridoon part of this double mouthpiece is cutting quite hard into the corners of the lips there. And the leverage of that alone is opening the mouth, let alone anything that the curb bit is doing. You'll see that the tongue is still in place there, but that's only really because it's trapped by two mouthpieces within the mouth. If that was a single mouthpiece in this position, the horse would be twisting and retracting its tongue by now. Again, when you look at the neck, you can see the crinkles in the throat. You can almost see it in the horse's eyes as well, actually. The distraction, not concentration, because they're trying to work with this distraction in their mouth. Also, I want you to note that the presence of canine teeth can have a real issue here when you're using a lower bit like a Weymouth here, because of their roots to their canine teeth. That can also be a problem with jointed bits as well. If you notice as well that the horse is sucking itself back into the rider's hands, again, it can't get air properly while its windpipe is now shut down as it is, because there's too much tension. And indeed, air will now be entering through the horse's mouth, which it was never intended to do. This is a common sight, sadly, a common sight, and I don't know if the mouth ever really comes to terms with having two bits in it. I think they often struggle just with one. Anyway, the next one, a classic picture of a horse, racehorse here. Doesn't look necessarily discernibly unhappy. However, I just want to pull attention again, the fact that this is a jointed bit here. You can see that by the way that it folds against the horse's face. Now the jockey is taking a pull on that right rein. Now again, if you notice this, you'll see how much of the inside of that mouthpiece is actually now on the outside. The joint of that mouthpiece is pretty much on those lips and the bars of the mouth. Now the horse will move its tongue over to try and allow some room for that, but of course it's now got a noseband on to prevent any such action. The problem with jointed bits is that often when they're loose ring like this, people will get them a bit bigger and think, well, it won't pinch the horse's cheeks because of the loose ring. And the reason they do that is because although we have bit rubbers, I remember many a time almost crying in a tack room trying to get these bit rubber guards onto these bits. And the bigger the bit ring, the more tears you're going to shed and nails you're going to break to try and do it. I understand. However, the bit is now fully in the wrong place and is no longer going to act as it was designed to act. It's now pushing the tongue, trapping the tongue. It's hitting the bars of the mouth, and if that jockey takes even more of a right pull on that rein, that joint is going to come right to the very lips there. Now, that means that the other side of the mouthpiece that's now being pulled through the mouth is now going horizontal across the tongue. So the nutcracker action that was designed to stop trapping the tongue is now fully trapping the tongue. And then the next one. And this, I've got no idea what anybody's mindset with this was, to be honest with you, but I'm going to discuss it anyway. This is draw reins. They were quite old-fashioned in their day. I think people have got a bit more posher kits now, but still work on the same thing. They act basically by winching the horse's head in, as you can clearly see here. Now, everything is wrong with this. There is not a thing that is right with it. We're on a racetrack, clearly, so this horse is being encouraged to canter and gallop. Its neck is protruding muscles all the way down, all the wrong muscles all the way down. You can see in its eyes what the problem is and the expanse that it has its mouth open, where the jaw is just being levered back with no remorse. Now, if the horse is being pushed forward into a pace like this one here, you're going to end up with some real bad physical problems as a result, because there's no way that the horse's body, anybody, can function at speed with weight on its back, with that kind of leverage in its lower jaw, with its mouth open. You're going to get displacement of the upper palate of the horse. You're going to get extreme neck and back problems, usually pole problems as well, which lead to things like head shyness, that sort of thing, which people don't often put two and two together, you'll find that the balance of the horse is completely shot. They can't use their hind legs like they're meant to because they can't work through their back and they can't balance themselves with their neck. I have no idea why anybody would use this kind of setup on a horse, particularly at gallop, and you can see to the detriment the amount of pressure on the lower jaw that this horse is enduring. There's no excuse for this, but I wanted to show you an extreme example. And this one here, I don't know what this is. It's clearly racing of some sort, but it looks a bit more polo-ish as well. I don't know. However, if I draw your attention to the fact that the grey horse is obviously well above the vertical at this point, well above the vertical, and you'll see that the mouth is open. Now, the rein is in a direct line, I will grant you, but it's being pulled right back almost up towards the horse's ears. So again, whatever bit is in that horse's mouth is not activating as it was intended, as it was designed. The head position is key. If this is a jointed bit, that will be driving the joint now into the bottom of the tongue, which is probably why you've got some tongue out there. You will have extreme pressure on the corners of the lips and the bit will be crushing the cheeks onto the horse's teeth. If this is a straight bar bit, then it will have rolled over the premolars. Hence, I guess, that term of getting the bit between the teeth, which incidentally is something a horse should never really do. Again, if a horse is working like this to any amount of time, you are going to have physical problems with it. The legs can't take the concussion because there's no balance and fluidity in the horse's body. There's no self-carriage. Again, the problem we have here is as soon as we take a backward pull on that mouth, everything changes. We should always be attempting to ride into a fixed hand when we want the horse to stop or slow down. The faster the pace, the more likely we are to not ride forward into that fixed hand, but to pull back. And once we pull back, if the horse's head varies from what would be a quote ideal position, the bit no longer is functioning how you think. And here we have another classic racehorse pick here. I'm not just picking on the jockeys, I promise. This is the citation bit by the look of it, which I will cover again a bit more in depth another time. But again, we see a horse that's quite clearly having to work with its mouth fully open here. And the reason for that, again, is the leverage on that small bit of lower jaw. There is nothing else the horse can do. It's pure leverage. Once they're uncomfortable within the mouth, then of course everything becomes much more difficult and much more trying for the horse and the rider. Now, a horse that's having to act like this in order to protect its mouth is never going to function at its full possibility. It's never going to meet its full potential, and injury will always be a side effect of this because the horse cannot function as its body was meant to function. It wants to be going into a soft, willing hand, and then that hand needs to be very still when we're slowing it down, and it needs to be our body actually bringing the horse back. Again, this is an ideal world. This is an ideal world. But once you get the horse comfortable, it's remarkable how much less fight and discomfort and therefore aggravation that you have. It's very easy to say to people, oh, you'll be fine, just take the bit out of the mouth. And they look at you like you're mad. Because you're effectively saying, look, you're struggling with your brakes, so let's just take the brakes away. But what people don't seem to comprehend always is that when you take the bone of contention out of the argument, then there is no bone of contention. Yes, we need to train our horses to yield to pressure. Just like we do with a dog on a lead, we need it to yield to that pressure. And again, another racehorse. I'm sorry, guys, but they're just brilliant for showing what I mean. Now, this one has got its tongue out. It was actually this issue all those moons ago when I first got my first horse when I was 13 that actually led me to where I am and what I do and my interests today, because this was one of her issues. And I was always embarrassed about it at first, and I kept trying different mouthpieces to work out, you know, how can I stop my horse from doing this? I had riding instructors who said I should strap her mouth shut, I should do a tongue tie, I should do this, I should do that. But it kind of, even in my young, naive, unknowing brain, I thought it's not normal to see a horse walking around like that. And the only thing that's different is she's got a bit in her mouth. So let's take the bit out of her mouth. And it worked. And here we are today. They can only exhibit anything as they can exhibit. They can't turn around and tell us, but they do in their bodies, areas of tension, recurring injury. A lot of the time it's coming from the head. If they're working against their rider, if they're enduring a bit that's really uncomfortable or not being handled properly, their body is not working right. You'll get them tipping at the pole. As I say, you'll get recurring injury, back problems, tension in the hamstrings. All those kind of things can all be coming from what you're holding in your reins. And I like to see horses comfortable. I like to see them work to their full potential. And I like to see riders find that fluidity with their horse rather than it being a constant battle, because a constant battle is just no fun to anyone, least of all the horse. Here we have a polo pony. Now, to my mind, they really do get hard draw here. You'll see they have martingales to stop them from getting their heads up too high to evade what are often gag bits in their mouths. Now, this is a high pressure, high impact, fast turnover sport. The horses have to turn on a sixpence or a dime, to my American friends, and they have to stop and start. They have to be very responsive. However, I'm not sure that forcing responsiveness and basically shutting emergency exits to the horse is a fair thing to do. They do have a tough time. You will see them struggling a lot with their bits, and the posture of this horse is by no means a rarity on the polo field. You'll see that its neck will never build up any of the correct balancing muscle because it's never allowed to use it. Its head will be yanked up and it will be spun round on those hind legs. They will have a lot of physio issues that will need constant addressing to keep them sound. I don't believe that they should have to put up with things strapping their head down to stop them escaping the pain that's going on while they're being yanked in the mouth. And it is a yanking, because if you're standing up in your stirrups and you are using all your weight on those two sets of reins, as they are in this case, you've got a side rein on there to stop it pulling away, and you've got a martingale to stop it pulling away. You're giving that horse no option but to endure whatever you are inflicting in its mouth. And I don't think that should be allowed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Just a little insight to some of the things that go on out there. I hope that you like and subscribe. Get me off on the algorithm thing. I'm not a very techie woman. I'm an animal person, not a techie person. But I'm learning. Slowly but surely I'm learning. So do let me know if you have any comments. And I'd love to see you again sometime soon. Bye now.